Discover the heartwarming truth: 100 incredible lives transformed by deadly medieval banquets. In the small, economically struggling town of Maplewood, the annual medieval feast was more than just a quirky festival, it held the promise of hope wrapped in traditional tapestry. Mothers and fathers gathered to nervously pin their handmade costumes and stir recipes passed down for generations. The local community center's future hung dangerously in the balance, and yet, as the sun dipped low behind the rolling hills, hearts began to uplift. This year, they were fighting for survival. Maria Sanchez, a 34-year-old single mother and proud veteran, felt the pulse of the community as she watched families hustle through the streets. The excitement in the air was infectious, yet beneath the surface lurked an anxiety that weighed heavily. Maria had always been a pillar of support, her warm smile hiding sleepless nights and countless struggles. As she prepared a hearty pot roast, the familiar scents reminded her of childhood feasts where laughter clouded any hint of trouble. But this year was different, it was a fight for the town she loved. "Mom, look at my costume." Her daughter, Lily, twirled in a bright blue gown that shimmered like the evening sky. Her little brother, Max, strolled behind her, bravely brandishing a cardboard sword. Maria's heart swelled with pride, but reality tugged at her like a riptide. Families from all walks of life gathered, yet as people greeted each other, whispered resentment simmered just below the surface. The wealthier newcomers, like Taylor Evans, had their own ideas on how to save the town, but could they truly understand the struggles of those born and raised in Maplewood? Maria pushed aside her growing frustration, reminding herself that this feast needed to unite them all. "Maybe if we shared our stories, we could find common ground," she suggested to anyone who would listen. She collected narratives like treasured memories, gathering tales of hardship, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of her townsfolk. The anticipation built, overwhelming excitement painted over shadows of doubt. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but one fateful moment changed everything. As the parade kicked off, a sudden glimpse of chaos, a horse, spooked by the clattering drums, reared up and threw its rider. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Suddenly, friends turned to foes as blame spiraled out of control. Tensions boiled, whispers of entitlement and bias floated through the air like thick fog. Maria faced Taylor in a furious confrontation, revealing hidden pains that had too long simmered beneath their friendly veneer. "You don't see us, do you? We need saving, not your schemes," she shouted, and her piercing words struck like a match on dry wood. As the crowd thickened around them, every heart felt the weight of their battles, eager for the bond, yet yearning for validation. With the community center's fate hanging by a thread, could forgiveness be found amongst weary souls? Maria's heart raced. The urgency of the moment sparked something deep within her. As emotions ignited the gathering, she knew the path toward healing began with honest dialogue. The question lingered in the air: would they lean on one another, or would flames of discord tear them apart, leaving a town broken forever? The tension clung to the evening air like a thick blanket, wrapping the crowd in unease. Maria stood her ground, heart pounding, as she faced Taylor. His features flickered between surprise and disbelief, caught off guard by her fierce honesty. Around them, the murmurs intensified, eyes darted back and forth in anticipation of what would unfold next. "Maria, I didn't mean to," Taylor began, but she cut him off, her words like arrows meant to pierce through the haze of misunderstanding. "But you didn't think at all. You don't know the struggles we face, the sacrifices we make just to keep this town alive." She gestured wildly at the families around them, each face reflecting pain, hope, and ferocity. A silence fell over the crowd, a heavy breath held in an unspoken agreement. Did they dare to confront the truth? It felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, a choice looming that could either bring them together or send them plummeting into chaos. "Let her speak," shouted a voice from the back, breaking the tension. It was Mr. Jenkins, an older gentleman who had been a fixture in the town for decades. His white hair fluttered like a flag as he stepped forward, eyes fierce. "We've heard enough from the newcomers. It's time we tell our stories." A ripple of agreement washed through the crowd. Maria felt the heat of an untapped strength rising within her. This was their moment. "Who is first?" she asked, her voice steady now, challenging anyone to take the leap. Slowly, a woman from the front rows, the baker known for her apple pies, stepped through the throng. "When I lost my husband, I didn't just lose a partner, I lost the means to support my family. We've been scraping by ever since." Her voice trembled, but her gaze held firm. "But this town, this community has been my lifeline. It's time we remember that." With each story shared, the crowd transformed. Bitterness gave way to empathy, shame to understanding. Men and women began to step forward, recounting tales of hardship, fleeting dreams, and the weight of unfulfilled promises. Maria listened, absorbing each heartbreak and triumph. The stories intertwined like threads of a tapestry, weaving a collective narrative that resonated deep within. Her heart swelled as she watched the faces of her neighbors soften, see the humanity in one another. Confidence replaced anger, connection grew from division. "Maybe this is our way forward," Maria suggested gently as the last story came to a close, a faint blush crossing her cheeks as she realized the power of vulnerability. "We gather these stories, share them at the feast. Let us remind everyone why our town matters." Her determined voice echoed in the charged atmosphere, and she could see the spark of hope igniting among the crowd, but even as they began to learn, a shadow lurked in the corners of the gathering. In the back, Taylor remained silent, calculating the implications of Maria's words. What could it mean for him, the newcomer with plans that might not match the dreams of those who called Maplewood home? As night deepened, a glow from the bonfire illuminated faces alive with possibility. Together, they would face the feast together, they would find a way through. Yet as Maria glanced at Taylor, uncertainty flickered in the pit of her stomach. Would he help build bridges or widen the divide? With the stakes impossibly high, could they truly create a future together? Would the encore of stories truly unite them, or would new divisions arise as the night unfolded? The weight of their choice hung in the balance, ready to tip at a moment's notice. Maria's heart raced as she scanned the crowd. Their faces now reflected a mix of hope and resolve, but lingering doubt gnawed at her. She turned her gaze back to Taylor, whose unreadable expression only deepened her unease. What would happen when morning came, when the stories became more than just tales shared around a flickering fire? A gentle breeze rustled through the trees as the bonfire crackled, casting dancing shadows and warm light across the gathering. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with the energy of newfound solidarity. People were ready to stand, ready to reclaim their voices. "All right," said Mr. Jenkins, stepping up beside Maria. "Let us put pen to paper, folks. We start tonight. Each story, every word, it matters." Gathering scraps of fabric, old notebooks, and some twigs from the surrounding area, the townsfolk began to design makeshift boards. Each one would host a story, a fragment of their collective heart. Maria felt the weight of the world lifting as she joined in, weaving the pieces together like a quilt that would wrap around their community. She moved among her neighbors, listening closely, encouraging them to share. There was energy in the air, a beating drum of resilience that urged them forward. Hours rolled by, filled with laughter and tears. Every contribution, no matter how small, felt monumental. Rose worked tirelessly, her hands covered in flour from baking earlier, but her smile shone brighter than the stars above. "This is what it means to be alive," she said softly to Maria. "To share and to be vulnerable. It's everything." But beneath the fervent pride shone Taylor's shadow, a jarring contrast to the warm humanity brewing. He stood apart, arms crossed, eyes deep in thought as he observed the transformation before him. During a lull in the chatter, he finally stepped away from the fringes. Taking a deep breath, he moved closer to Maria, who immediately felt the heat of confrontation igniting once more. "Maria, I need to talk to you." She squared her shoulders, wary of a repeat of earlier tensions. "What's on your mind, Taylor?" "There's something you don't understand about my intentions here," he said, his voice low but firm, drawing in the surrounding crowd's attention. "These stories, while beautiful, won't stop what this town needs to thrive. And I wish to help, but if I can't convince you." His voice trailed off, hinting at unspoken truths. "What do you mean?" Maria pressed, her pulse quickening. "I mean, I have plans for the development project," he said, glancing at a few townsfolk who regarded him warily. "Real plans. Plans that could bring jobs, but they could also change everything." The warmth in her chest began to cool, replaced by the icy grip of conflict. Could he truly believe that a flashy new development could rival the rich legacy of decades of struggle and survival? Just then, an unexpected voice pierced the night. "What if we don't choose one over the other?" It was Mrs. Henderson, a retired schoolteacher with a gentle wisdom. "What if we could merge our past with the future? What if we could build without losing who we are?" Maria felt the weight of her decision grow heavier. Could dreams of expansion and progress coalesce with the stories she had gathered around the fire? With emotions spiraling and uncertainty ruling the night, the tension was building again, deeper than before. As the bonfire flickered, casting shadows of those who had come together, Maria faced Taylor, her heart aching with the weight of uncharted possibilities. They stood, staring into each other's eyes, the unspoken question hanging thick in the air: could they really find common ground amidst the unsettling crossroads? And as the night wrapped around them like a cloak, she wondered, with a mix of fear and hope, what the dawn would reveal. The first light of dawn stretched its golden fingers across the horizon, spilling warmth into the cool morning air. Maria stood by the embers of the extinguished bonfire, the flickering memories of last night still swirling in her mind. The townsfolk were beginning to gather again, their faces illuminated by a blend of resolve and anxiety. She could still feel Taylor's intensity, his gaze piercing through the haze of conflicting emotions. Words bounced in her mind: how could they build something new without disrespecting the past? As the sun climbed higher, its rays began to pierce through the uncertainty that clouded the path ahead. "Maria." It was Rose again, her cheerful voice breaking through the stillness. She approached, her eyes sparkling with determination and some flower dust still clinging to her apron. "Everyone is ready to talk seriously about our stories today. It felt like we were building something last night. We need to keep that momentum going." "Right." Maria nodded, her brow furrowing slightly. "But I can't shake off the burden of Taylor's plans. That could change everything." Rose's smile faded just a bit. "I know, but change can be good. Sometimes, it helps us grow. Let us see if we can shape our stories into something that Taylor can understand, something that shows him who we really are." The thought struck Maria like a bell ringing in her heart, resonating with what Mrs. Henderson had said. What if their stories were the bridge between the past and the future? What if, in sharing their truths, they could find a way to incorporate Taylor's visions with their own? She could already envision mothers recounting their fears, fathers telling about their struggles, children sharing dreams of better times. As the group assembled, Maria took a deep breath, filled with a new sense of purpose. "Everyone," she called out, her voice steady and clear. "Today, we share our stories not just to remember, but to find a way to merge our hopes with the future. Let us not shy away from who we are. Let us make it a part of the conversations moving forward." The crowd nodded in understanding, inspiration lighting their faces. As people began to step forward, nervous but eager, Maria felt her own anxiety fade. Story after story unfolded, filled with laughter, pain, and a deep sense of community. Then came a moment that changed everything. An elder named Mr. Sullivan stepped into the circle with a quivering smile. "My family has been here for generations," he started, his voice shaky yet filled with warmth. "When we first moved here, the town had nothing but dreams. He recounted tales of struggle and survival that mirrored the stories Maria had kept in her heart. Each word wove a tapestry of resilience that connected the past with the present. As he shared, Maria glanced at Taylor, standing slightly further away, caught between curiosity and skepticism. His gaze met hers briefly, a flicker of realization crossing his face. With every story, the distance seemed to lessen. As the sun rose even further, the stories began to merge into a collective vision. They were drawing lines between memory and hope, creating paths that could lead them to a common ground with Taylor's plans, but before they could finish their thoughts, the piercing sound of a horn echoed in the distance, a sharp contrast to the morning's warmth. It was uneven, a raucous note that sent a ripple of anticipation through the crowd. Maria's heart raced as she spun toward the horizon. What could that be? She whispered, her breath catching in her throat. In that moment, the fragile threads of unity hung in the balance. They had just begun to weave the future but had a foreboding sense that something, or someone, was about to disrupt it all. As the sound drew nearer, Maria wondered, would this new presence bring chaos or an unexpected ally with a shared purpose? The sound grew louder, thrumming through the atmosphere like a heartbeat. Maria squinted against the rising sun, seeking the source of the raucous horn. Others in the crowd began to murmur among themselves, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. Children clutched their parents' hands, while the elders hushed the whispers, straightening themselves as if preparing for an impending storm. What is that? Rose's voice trembled with curiosity and concern. Maria could see the way Rose's fingers tightened around the fabric of her apron, a telltale sign of her own growing anxiety. In the distance, a cloud of dust billowed upward, growing closer with every sound of the horn. The crowd shifted, eyes wide, as they caught glimpses of figures moving through the haze. Maria's heart thudded in her chest. She reached out for Rose's hand, feeling the need for solidarity as they faced the unknown together. Then, from the dust emerged a group of riders, their horses thundering over the uneven terrain, their faces masked by a mixture of purpose and authority. A chill ran down her spine. Were they here to bring change, or to impose their own will? Taylor stepped forward, drawn by the commotion, his face a mask of determination. Everyone, stay calm, he urged, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. Maria could see that he, too, was grappling with the inevitable clash brewing before them. As the riders approached, Maria noticed the insignia on their banners, a symbol of the neighboring town they had always regarded with cautious respect. The riders reined in their mounts, boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud that reverberated through the assembled townsfolk. The leader, a tall woman with deep-set eyes and a stern expression, dismounted. "I'm Captain Hale of Willow Grove," she announced, her voice sharp and commanding. "We've heard rumors about your gathering and the changes you seek. We need to talk, and fast." The air buzzed with tension, every person holding their breath. Maria locked eyes with Taylor, who appeared more resolute than ever. "This could be an opportunity," he whispered to her, urgency seeping into his words. "Let us hear what she has to say." Before Maria could respond, Captain Hale continued, "We're not here to disrupt, but we have our own interests that may align with yours. But you need to listen to reason, or you might lose everything you hold dear." Unsure whether to trust her, Maria felt a knot twist in her stomach. Did they really want peaceful dialogue, or were they just here to impose their will? The crowd remained silent, the weight of the moment settling heavily upon them. They had just begun to unite, to carve out their future, and now fear threatened to splinter their newfound connection. The stories they had shared moments ago rang in her ears, tales of resilience, hope, and community. Was it enough to face this challenge? "Speak to us, Captain," Maria found her voice amid the silence. "You say you have interests that align with ours. We've shared our histories, our dreams. What history do you bring with you?" Captain Hale regarded Maria, her expression unreadable. After a beat, she stepped closer, the tension in her posture softening just slightly. "Our towns have been strangers for too long. But there's more at stake now, something bigger than us." As Maria listened, she felt the stirrings of defiance rise within her. This was their moment, a pivotal chance to protect everything they had just begun to build. She could feel the air thickening with a new sense of resolve. But what was the bigger threat looming behind Captain Hale's words? Maria sensed the winds of change were about to swirl through their lives once more, whether they welcomed it or not. In that defining moment, curiosity and fear danced within her heart. Would they stand united against whatever storm was coming, or would they allow old rivalries to tear them apart again? Suddenly, a shout broke through the gathered crowd. "Look out!" In one heartbeat, the course of the meeting shifted dramatically. The delicate threads of their unity quivered, holding on by a thread, as the unexpected reality revealed itself. The alarm rang like a bell, sending chills through the gathered crowd. People whipped their heads around, trying to pinpoint the source of the shout. Maria felt her grip on Rose tighten. Whatever was happening could break their fragile unity in an instant. "Look out!" came the voice again, louder this time, frantic. The crowd began to scatter, instinct kicking in as parents pulled their children close and others jumped back, craning their necks to see what danger lurked just beyond the dust and that chaos. Maria caught a glimpse. A massive figure, riding a powerful black stallion, surged forward from the haze, a wild mane whipping around them like a tempest. It was one of the neighboring riders, faces still obscured in the clouds of dust. But what sent a jolt of fear racing through her was the look on the rider's face, frantic, desperate. Captain Hale stepped forward, her voice cutting through the turmoil. "Stand your ground!" she barked, though even she seemed rattled. "This isn't an attack." Maria's heart raced. If it wasn't an attack, then what could it be? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the ground beneath them seemed to tremble, and a deep rumble echoed in the distance. The riders' horses snorted, ears flicking back and forth as they sensed the unrest around them. Taylor took a step toward Captain Hale, his brow furrowed. "What is going on?" he asked, the fear creeping into his voice despite his attempts to sound composed. At that moment, the dust began to settle, revealing the rider's panic. Maria squinted to see a glint of metal in his hands, a horn, larger and more ornate than the one that had drawn them together. The rider pulled his horse back with a swift tug on the reins and shouted, "There's a herd of stampeding cattle coming this way. They're out of control." Gasps of horror echoed through the crowd. Parents shielded their children, the elderly trembled as they pieced together the immediacy of the threat. Stampeding cattle could destroy everything. The growing tension in Maria's chest snapped, filled with a sense of urgency she hadn't felt before. "Everyone, listen." Captain Hale stepped closer, taking charge. "We can't panic. We need a plan. If we work together, we can save what's important, but we have to act fast." Her voice carried, igniting a spark in the people around her. Maria could see her neighbors looking to each other, bolstered by Captain Hale's authority. It was a chance to unite in the face of a common enemy, a chance to show that they were more than just cautious allies. "Let us gather the children and the elderly," Maria shouted, the resolve building inside her. "We need to lead them to safety." Taylor nodded, springing into action. "I'll help organize the barricades. Does anyone have ropes? We can try to steer the herd away before they reach the town." As the crowd buzzed with action, Maria felt a rush of adrenaline course through her veins. They were standing side by side now, strangers becoming allies, each person's fear transformed into determination. It wasn't just about their towns anymore, it was about their lives. Silently, Maria prayed it would be enough. Hope flickered within her like a flame, but the fear of what might happen lingered in her mind. Would they pull together and weather this storm, or would they falter at the first sign of danger? Just then, a rumble echoed behind them, shaking the ground once more. The moment of truth was drawing near. Could they truly face this threat together, turning desperation into courage? And just as they prepared to act, a shadow flickered across the path ahead, a figure emerging from the dust, standing defiantly in the face of the oncoming chaos. Was it friend or foe? She could hardly breathe, recognizing that in the shadows lay both their fate and hope. The figure slowly emerged from the swirling dust, a tall silhouette standing resolute against the oncoming chaos. Maria squinted, her heart pounding, searching for any hint of familiarity in the outline. As the dust settled, she recognized the flowing cloak and the glinting badge, the emblem of their town's protector, which belonged to none other than Sheriff Mendez. "What are you doing out here?" Maria yelled, her voice breaking through the din. "We need to get everyone to safety." "Mendez!" Captain Hale shouted, relief washing over her face. "Get people to the east side of the town square." The sheriff nodded briskly, taking swift, authoritative steps to rally the town's folk. "You heard the captain," he barked, cutting through the noise like a knife. "Move east. Keep the children and families together." Maria felt a rush of gratitude mixed with fear. With Mendez directing, a wave of calm began to flow through the crowd. They knew what they needed to do. Ropes appeared from the depths of old barns, makeshift barricades were tossed together, and neighbors shouted out instructions, their panic morphing into fierce determination. "Taylor, help me with this," Maria called, grabbing a bundle of ropes. Together, they looped the thick strands around old wooden crates, a barrier against the incoming stampede. "Keep pulling," Taylor shouted to the others as they began to form a line on the southern edge of the square. One by one, townsfolk brushed the dirt off their clothes, stepping confidently into their roles. Maria could feel Rose beside her, small and quiet, watching the unfolding chaos with wide eyes. Kneeling down, Maria took her daughter's hand. "It's going to be okay, Rose. We just need to help everyone stay safe." The little girl nodded, her initial fear fading as she absorbed her mother's strength. The rumbling grew louder. Maria's heart sank. She could only imagine the sight of the cattle, racing toward them with thunderous force, their hooves pounding the earth like a war drum, ready to unleash destruction. Just beyond the line of crates, the dust was thickening, swirling high like a storm cloud. Suddenly, a roar echoed from the distance. "There they are!" shouted one of the riders as he barreled into view. The herd was stampeding, dark shapes galloping wildly over the ridge. Panic rippled through the crowd. "Hold your ground!" Captain Hale yelled at the top of her lungs. "Wait for my signal to divert them." Their faces shifted, colors draining as the danger drew closer. Maria's hands shook, tied tight around the ropes. It felt like a dam was about to burst, emotions coiling tightly within her: fear, determination, and an undeniable hope. Then, as if time itself stretched, she caught the sheriff's eye. There was a nod of understanding between them, a shared resolve, as if he knew exactly what was at stake for their town. "On my mark." The hairs on Maria's arms stood on end. Would they be able to redirect the herd? How many lives depended on them holding strong? Just then, the rumbling increased, the ground trembling underfoot as the first cattle burst into view, a chaotic surge of fur and fear. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Would they stand firm as a wall against nature's reckless fury? The sky seemed to darken with dust and noise, the town's future hanging in the balance. Could hope truly hold against a stampede? Would they unite just in time, or would their bravery be swept away in the chaos? The first wave of cattle kicked up clouds of dirt, their wild eyes glinting with panic. The ground trembled violently as they stormed toward the barricade, a living tide of chaos only moments away from crashing into everything Maria held dear. In that gut-wrenching moment, she felt time slow and speed up all at once. Her heart thumped like a war drum. "Now!" Captain Hale shouted, and with a swift motion, she raised her arm to signal. Maria drew a deep breath and anchored her feet, pulling Rose close to her. The captain's cry ignited the crowd. Ropes were pulled taut, and everyone braced themselves, muscles straining against an invisible tide. It was more than a physical barricade, it was the hope of their community, woven together in strength and resolve. With a roar, the stampede thundered closer, the power of 1,000 hooves overpowering the sound of the townsfolk's cries. Maria's grip on the rope tightened. The energy surged through her, driving them forward despite the fear cracking at her resolve. "Steady!" Steady! Mendez shouted as his authoritative voice cut through the chaos like a lighthouse in the storm. Maria's eyes darted to Rose, whose small face was buried against her side, finding solace in her mother's strength. "Don't let go," Maria murmured, running her fingers through her daughter's hair as she fought the tremor in her hands. The first two cows collided with the crates they had constructed. The structure groaned under the weight, threatening to give way. Hoots and hollers erupted from the crowd as more townsfolk rushed to reinforce the barricade. Adrenaline pumped in their veins, urging them to fight back against the chaos. "Push them left!" Captain Hale shouted again, her voice a beacon amidst the dark frenzy. And they did. Together, the line of townsfolk bent at the waist, their combined efforts sending the first few cattle veering away from the vulnerable heart of their town. "More to the left!" Taylor yelled, rallying beside Maria. The world around them grew hazy, swirling more in the dust than in her mind. Time felt distorted. Every moment stretched into eternity and then shot back into a furious flurry of sounds and movement. They did it. The herd shifted slightly, but not enough. From the corner of her eye, Maria caught sight of Sheriff Mendez, directing the nearby riders with a confident hand. He was determined to divert the stampede further away from them. Then suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the barricade. A crate splintered, and the momentum set off a ripple through the makeshift wall. Maria gasped. Was it enough to break them? Fear clawed at her throat. "Don't break! Don't break!" She whispered fervently, squeezing Rose's hand in reassurance as she felt the small fingers tremble back at her. "Hold strong!" Captain Hale shouted, pushing against the growing tide. Maria felt the resolve of the crowd. They were more than just a barrier, they were a shield for one another. Families entangled, friends linked tight, this was their fight together. As the cattle bore down, Maria finally understood what was truly at stake. It was not just about saving their town, it was about protecting their home, their families, and the legacy they would leave behind. And as the dust swirled, she held on to the hope that somehow, through all of this, they would emerge stronger together. But, just as courage rang in the air, a sudden, deafening roar startled everyone. What was happening? Were more cattle coming from another direction? The hearts of the townsfolk raced as they began to prepare for another wave. What danger lay beyond the dust? Was it too late? The earth shook even more violently as the roar echoed again, sending adrenaline surging through Maria's veins. She strained to see through the thickening dust, heart pounding against her ribcage. Something was coming, but what? The dread twisted her stomach as panic clawed at the edges of her mind. "Captain!" Taylor shouted, scanning the horizon, his voice strained with urgency. "What is that?" Maria felt Rose clutch tighter to her, senses heightened, fear spilling over. They had faced this stampede together, but something in the air shifted. A new wave was forming, and with it came uncertainty. "Everyone, hold steady!" Captain Hale's voice boomed, cutting through the noise. She kept her eyes locked on the horizon, a steady reminder of leadership. "We need to ready ourselves for whatever comes next." Another roar, closer this time, shattered the moment, vibrating through the ground. Clusters of townsfolk exchanged worried glances, retreating a step. Sweat trickled down Maria's back. She hated the doubt creeping in. They had pushed back the cattle, they could do this. Suddenly, as the dust began to clear, Mariana Wright, the town's oldest farmer, pointed towards a distant rise. "Look!" she cried out, voice breaking with shock. "It's not another wave. It's a herd of wild horses." Maria's heart lifted momentarily, but a new wave of panic washed over her as the realization set in. The horses were racing toward the same barricade. Their wild eyes were just as frantic, just as desperate as the cattle. "Steady, everyone!" Captain Hale's command rang out again, but uncertainty flickered among them. Would they be able to contain a stampede of horses on top of the cattle? Maria glanced at Rose, who still held tightly to her mother, confusion etched on her innocent features. "What is happening, Mama?" she whispered, eyes wide with fear. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," Maria assured her, though her own heart raced against the backdrop of chaos. She tried to soothe her own fears while bolstering Rose's courage. "Just like before. We will hold strong, together." As the horses thundered toward them, wild and beautiful, there was a clash of instincts within the crowd. The people around her held their breath, standing firm, but uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Faced with a choice, Maria felt that familiar weight on her shoulders again, a leader among them, despite the dread that bubbled beneath. "Push the cattle left," Captain Hale shouted. "But watch for the horses. We don't want to lose them in the chaos. Can we even control them?" Someone muttered near Maria, doubt threading through their hurried breaths. "We have to try." Another voice chimed in. With the thunder of hooves and shouts blending into one deafening siren, Maria sensed the fate of her town balancing on the line of bravery. The combined forces of panic and determination filled the air. Who would stay on this wall, and who would step into the unknown to protect what they loved? As the horses drew closer, she took a deep breath, steeling herself. They had come together as a community once. Could they do it again? Could they change the course of their destiny amid chaos? All that she held dear surged through her: her daughter, her friends, her town. "On my count," Captain Hale shouted, gathering everyone's eyes, seeping resolve back into the wavering minds. 1, 2, 3. With that, the townsfolk braced for impact once more, prepared to hold the line. But for Maria, the joyous image of swaying manes and spirited hooves ignited within her. There was beauty even in this chaos. The moment was electric, poised on the fine edge of fear and hope, but just as they sprang into action, a fence post behind them splintered. With a sound like cracking thunder, a cow bolted unexpectedly, colliding straight into the line. This felt far from over. What would happen when the clash of cattle and horses met their now fractured barricade? Would their unity hold? In those breathless seconds, Maria felt the weight of an impending storm surge, one that could change them all forever. The impact was overwhelming. A cow broke loose, crashing into the barricade, causing it to tremble under the pressure. Panic rippled through the crowd as townsfolk stumbled back. Maria's heart raced wildly as she felt Rose's small fingers slip from her grasp. "No!" she shouted, reaching for her daughter, eyes wide with fear, but time seemed to slow. The air filled with chaos, a tangle of shouts, the frantic sound of hooves pounding against dirt, and the desperate cries of neighbors. Maria darted forward, pushing through the throng, her heart pounding in her ears. All she could think about was Rose. "Rose!" she cried, her voice nearly swallowed by the mayhem. She spotted her daughter standing frozen, wide-eyed, just as another surge of cattle swept closer. Maria felt her chest tighten. She was too far away, too far from safety. "Get back!" she yelled. Captain Hale was shouting orders, trying to regain control. "To the left. Make the turn." But all Maria could see was Rose, terrified and alone. And that wild herd of horses, charging like a storm, seemed determined to break into the square. In that moment of sheer panic, something inside Maria ignited. It was more than a mother's instinct, it was a fire born of love for her town, her family, their survival. "Everyone, back to the barricades!" Maria yelled, rallying the townsfolk with unyielding confidence. "We can't let fear win. We can redirect them together." With determination pulsing through her veins, she reached Rose and knelt down, locking eyes with her daughter. "Hold on to my hand, sweetheart. We need to help. Are you ready?" Rose nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, but her small face was resolute. Together, they joined the others. A new energy coursed through the crowd as they scrambled back into position, links between neighbors tightening. Their shared resolve was palpable. "Pushing left!" Taylor shouted, his voice rising over the chaos, motivating those around him. "Keep steady!" The townsfolk held together, forming a resolute wall once again, this time anchored by a bond stronger than fear. They watched the unruly stampede as it barreled closer, and with a synchronized push, they diverted the flowing tide. With the horses and the cattle merging into a cacophony of motion, Maria felt fierce pride in her heart. The chaos was magnificent, majestic even, despite the danger it represented. They weren't just individuals fighting for survival, they were a community, risking it all together. In the swirling dust, she found her strength in connection. Stories meant something now, they weren't merely remnants of the past, they were their future, woven together. The cattle streamed past, but the horses started to shift direction, veering off like ribbons of freedom. Now! Block off the gap! Captain Hale shouted, her voice fierce and unwavering. And as an echo of unity filled the air, townsfolk pressed forward, arms joined, creating an impenetrable line. Maria watched as the stampede's force began to give way. The spirit of the town surged, as if they were bound together by something greater than the farmhouses and streets they called home. The waves began to settle, the thundering hooves fading into the distance. Then, just like that, the roar of chaos transformed into a collective sigh of relief. Silence washed over them, replaced by cheers as the townsfolk realized they had done it. They had held the line together. In that moment, Maria caught sight of Taylor, who stood among the crowd, glancing back with newfound respect and admiration. He was no longer the outsider with plans that overshadowed their stories, he was part of something much larger now, a co-creator of their future. Together, we can build something incredible, he called out, eyes gleaming with possibility. Let us combine our dreams, not fight them. Tears filled Maria's eyes as she pulled Rose close, more proud than ever. The incredible spirit of those stories surged through her, illuminating her heart. They weren't just tales of hardship, they were life, fellowship, a promise of hope. The sun shone brightly over Maplewood as the townsfolk rallied around one another, laughter and relief replacing lingering fear. They began to share their stories, not just from last night, but from generations past as they all stood together. Maria felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she looked around, the bonds they had woven shimmering like threads of gold. The community center was still there, ready for rebuilding, but this time it wasn't just about survival, it was about thriving. Together. As they dusted themselves off and began sharing their narratives, Maria voiced the unspoken sentiment that lingered among them. Let us create a new tapestry, a celebration of our stories, our future. Hands shot up in agreement, and cheers erupted. And at that moment, Maria knew they would transform not only their town but each other, becoming champions of resilience, hope, and the true definition of unity. Together, they would forge a new path. And as the first day of their new beginning dawned brightly, she realized that through every struggle, they had discovered the heartwarming truth: they were more than a community, they were a family fighting for one another. So, what's next for Maplewood? The answer is clear, it's a journey, hand in hand, heart to heart. Don't wait not even one more second. Hit that subscribe button now to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like so the algorithm knows you want more inspiring transformations. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible journey. You need to support the channel and become part of this amazing community.